George Floyd, Hamas, and now criminal illegal aliens. Those are apparently the groups the left is ready and willing to riot, burn, smash, and vandalize in the name of. Wouldn't you know it? Those are also the groups the Democrat Party primarily serves and caters to, plus, of course, the they-thems. But the Democrat Party has shown its ass for years, for decades, really, but especially in these last 5 months. They're really hoping you're on board with their sick notion that those who enforce the law are the problem, not those who break it. Setting cars on fire isn't really arson, you see. It's just a Cali summer bonfire.
There's a large group of people. It could turn very volatile if you move law enforcement in there in the wrong way and turn what is just a bunch of people having fun watching cars burn into a massive confrontation and altercation between officers and demonstrators.
So much fun just to watch the cars burn. And I'm sure throwing rocks and cinder blocks at officers perched over an overpass isn't a deadly and violent assault. They're just skipping stones on an imaginary pond, and the officers, well, they got in the way. That's how stupid Democrats think you are. You'll notice, though, Democrats will never lift a finger to protect the decent, legal, law-abiding citizens of this country, but they are willing to bend over backwards to legitimize and shield the thugs. Here's another fun one. The left really wants you to believe that President Trump sending in reinforcements to keep Los Angeles from burning to the ground is the reason the lawless feral beasts went rabid. So they lied to you about the Russia witch hunt. They lied to you about COVID. They lied to you about the Hunter Biden laptop. They lied to you about Joe's cognitive state. They lied to you about the open border. So I guess just add this mostly peaceful one to the list. They cannot be trusted, and Charlemagne was right. The Democrat Party is severely lacking a lot, but mainly honesty and courage. But since it is Liberal Tuesday, after all, you know I welcome the dialogue. If I'm missing something here, I'm open to the conversation. So joining me now to state her case is Democratic strategist, and I keep saying it, Democrats need a lot of strategy right now, Morgan Harper. Morgan, I appreciate you being here. Now listen, I'm a little rough on the Democrat Party right now, I think for good reason. But if I'm missing something from your perspective on these LA riots, you got to fill me in.
Well, thanks for having me. And look, from my perspective in Columbus, Ohio, the Democrats have a lot of room for improvement. We as Democrats, certainly in my home state here, but on the LA issue in particular, I would say there's probably a little bit more nuance I would point you to than what your overview included. So specifically, I don't think that the Democrats are united in response here. I mean, I think we need to distinguish between Democrats and people on the ground who are engaging in activity that is illegal, like setting cars on fire and potentially throwing things at law enforcement officers. I don't think that all Democrats are condoning that behavior in the slightest. I do think, though, that there is a lot of Democratic consensus around making sure that to the extent that we are going to be looking to enforce our immigration laws against people, then we need to make sure we're getting the right people first. And then secondly, that we still have this thing called states' rights. And that's where the president has gone too far by not going through the step of getting approval from the governor of California before sending troops into the state.
Okay. So a lot I want to respond to there. So, yeah, there have been some Democrats who have said, of course, the little, nod and wink, like, don't be violent, right? But the message that it sends when you have Democrat leaders, especially in California, that are running Los Angeles and the state, when you have them going on mainstream media and the thing that they're saying the loudest and the most frequently is, we hate Trump, Trump bad, immigration raids bad, law enforcement bad, the riots and the looting, they're mostly peaceful. The message that sends to the people on the ground is keep going. It sends the message that your actual leaders, who should have probably called in the National Guard themselves, they are more interested in combating President Trump and the White House than they are actually protecting the city of Los Angeles. And again, there's a lot to discuss here, but going back to why these riots / protests / looting is going on is because ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, went to Los Angeles to conduct an ICE raid, which is by definition what they are supposed to do. Now, California might not think that enforcing federal immigration law is important, but that doesn't mean the White House is going to kowtow to California's sanctuary policy. So when you see Gavin Newsom and Mayor Karen Bass and Rep. Ted Lieu and all the others saying, oh, well, it's inflammatory to send in the National Guard, my response would be it's inflammatory to light the streets on fire over criminal illegal aliens and ICE agents doing their duty. Now, I'm sure that there's some part of you that sees that.
Yeah, and I would be interested if you have clips of elected officials in response to LA that are condoning any of the behavior that we're seeing regarding setting cars on fire or assaulting anyone really. That all I haven't seen that, so I would be interested if we have clips.
When they say it's mostly peaceful, and then we show the photos of the cars on fire and the law enforcement officers being attacked and federal buildings being defaced and vandalized. And now we've got the looting, of course, for the abuelas, I guess. They're looting for their neighbors, their illegal immigrant neighbors. I guess that's why you would knock over an Apple store. I don't understand that one. But when they're saying, hey, this is mostly peaceful, and it's clearly not mostly peaceful, and when you've got LAPD itself saying we are overwhelmed, I mean, it's really hard there not to feel like we're being, once again, lied to by Democrat leaders.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, again, I mean, in agreement on the certain behavior that you cited, that I just haven't seen a Democratic leader that's saying that that's okay. And whether they're saying that's mostly peaceful. I mean, look, I kind of share your skepticism of some things that we're seeing in mainstream media around the coverage of what's going on. I mean, I was tuning into some of the coverage. It seemed like they kept showing the exact same car over and over and over again for hours at a time, because you know how mainstream media is driven by trying to make as much money as possible, and that drives people to continue to engage. But I don't know if it's completely accurate coverage. I have no idea. Not there on the ground, and I think we probably share a healthy skepticism of what we're seeing in coverage. But look, here's what I do know, and here's what I'm hearing from a lot of people, actually of both sides of the aisle, both Republicans and Democrats, is a concern about wanting to make sure that we're taking care of people who live in this country, a concern about wanting to protect rule of law. And that's where it starts to get really tricky, I think, right, Tomi, on if we have an amendment that is part of the Constitution that says that you have to check in with the governor before you send troops, then I don't quite get how we can just get around that. And look, I agree that we need to make sure that we are protecting law and order, of course, but we also need to make sure that we are protecting the rule of law. That is part of that. And it just seems like that's a little bit in question here.
Here's what I find tricky here. And I'm not even going to go into the legality of it. This president is able to federalize the National Guard if he feels that federal assets and agents are under threat or attack, which they clearly were. So that is under his jurisdiction to be able to do. Now, when you've got LAPD saying that we're overwhelmed, I wish that the governor would have stepped up and said, okay, we need some help. We need the National Guard. We need to do something. But because the governor is more concerned with the optics of his leadership and his ambitions, and because they would rather go after the administration and protect illegal immigrants, they were never going to do that. We know that. But when you've got LAPD, thanks to, in large part, the defund movement 5 years ago, being overwhelmed, someone's got to do something. This president is not going to sit back and allow a great American city to be burned to the ground again. We learned our lesson in 2020. We're not going to allow that. But just strategically here, from a messaging standpoint, I really want to dive in and get your perspective on this and have you explain it to me. Do you think that it is politically strategic for Democrats to not only say, listen, we want criminal illegal aliens to stay in our communities, we want to protect them, we want to go against ICE that's doing their job to remove the criminal element from our communities? Do you think that that's strategically sound? And then moreover, do you think it's strategically sound to make the argument of, well, it's really Trump who broke the law for sending in troops and National Guard to defend a city from being burned down? That's the real problem here, not that the city is being burned down. That would be an interesting political strategy in my perspective.
Look, yeah, I think that it's important that Democrats have a strong position on immigration. I mean, that was a clear takeaway from the November election, that there are a lot of people in the country that are looking for political leaders to have a strategy around managing immigration. But there's just as many people, I think, part of the takeaway from the election, that are interested in making sure that we have political leaders that are offering a comprehensive economic plan. I would say probably even more people I would argue, I don't know if you agree, economic plan for the future of this country. And it's kind of connected to the immigration issue, right? Making sure that we have the ability of every young person that is here in the United States has the ability to build a life and potentially exceed where their parents were and have a fair shot at opportunity. That is something that a lot of us agree on. And I think there's a lot of frustration. I hear this all the time in Columbus, where I live, in Columbus, Ohio, that nobody is really offering that. And so when we look at, what, in terms of the second part of your question around, how you engage in your critiques of President Trump, I do think as Democrats, we need to be honest about the fact that some people believe that he is offering an economic agenda that is appealing, but we're starting to see that there's a lot of uncertainty around the execution of that. For example, last month we saw 8,000 manufacturing jobs that were lost. That is not going to bring back manufacturing to places like Ohio if we're seeing those types of losses nationally. And so, and then just to end there on the legality point, yeah, most people aren't lawyers. I'm a lawyer. Most people aren't lawyers. So I don't think people have a very, huge capacity to want to get into the weeds of any legal issue. But I do think that most Americans understand right and wrong. I do think a lot of us believe in the Constitution, believe in the principles, the founding of this country, and want to see those principles followed. And it just happens. And this isn't something, obviously, that either of us was a part of at that time, or as amendments were being developed. But one of those amendments says that state rights are honored. And here you do have to get that approval to enter California and authorize. There has to be a certain level of emergency in the touch base with the governor to authorize these types of troops to enter and manage any situation. And if we can't abide by those principles of the Constitution, then I think we do start to really threaten the stability of our country.
Yeah. Again, I fully see what you're saying. I think, just to be completely honest with you, when your argument and the argument of the Democrat establishment at large is, well, he should have gotten Gavin's permission to go and protect the city that Gavin wasn't going to protect. That's a hard argument to make to your average American simpleton out there like me that's like, that's the strategy? That's what you guys are going with, right? It's we need Kilmar Abrego needs to come back. We got him on body cam trafficking, but another trial, I get what you're saying, that you can be but legally, yeah. But the American people who are exhausted of that, I think that's going to be a hard sell strategically to the American people, because they're no, I happen to feel like the people burning the cars and attacking the law enforcement and the ICE agents and defacing federal buildings, I happen to think that they're more of a problem than Gavi Poo not giving the permission. But maybe that's just me being, a simple conservative.
Well, I think you raise a fair point about there's some different constituencies of the Democratic Party or people who tend to vote for Democrats. So much is getting scrambled right now. It's hard to categorize where a lot of people are falling. But I do think you have, one of those constituencies is hardcore Democratic base voters, right? And a lot of the folks in that camp want to see these types of responses from, they understand the court cases. Maybe they don't know every bit of the law, but they understand what a court case means. They want to see Democratic leaders show that they're putting up a fight. And I imagine that is partly, in addition to wanting to abide by the law, what's driving, these California leaders to bring this lawsuit.
It's really hard, though, when you say we want these people want to abide by the law, but they see more of a problem with President Trump protecting an American city than they do the people who are destroying said American city. Again, if you look at the side by side, I would love to see polling on it, but I think you're going to be hard pressed to be yes, the people in the street, they should be there, but President Trump shouldn't make sure that the 101 isn't completely overtaken, or our federal agents are not being assaulted and rocked and possibly killed. Yeah, I think that's a hard sell, but I have so much to talk to you about. So I want to move on a little bit, because I want to get your perspective on a lot of things that I think are plaguing the Democrat Party right now. And right alongside the protection of illegal aliens is the men and women's sports thing. And I know a lot of Democrats that have been on my show, they want to spin this and do not that big of a deal, but it's a big deal. And Democrats are not moving off of it So I would first like your perspective on that issue, because we know that there's variety within the Democrat Party and where they stand. What's your unique take on the issue?
Yeah, I was first point, I generally, and this gets at what we were just talking about in the prior conversation. I think people should be free to be protected. And that, if you live here and you're a citizen, you should be able to live the life that you're looking for as long as you're not endangering anybody else. That's first point. But, on this issue of sports and gender in sports, I think it is highly, highly local. And I've found this in conversations with people. It's just, there's a lot of variety, like you were saying, on this issue, not just among Democrats, but just the general public. And so it's tough to come up with some kind of overarching policy. I think a lot of it probably is best managed at the local level based on the sensibilities of the people that are making up that community.
So I guess for me, I get a little frustrated when I see biological men taking over women's sports, and then it falls on the women's sport to accommodate that person who wants to infiltrate said sport. And that seems to be the narrative. It's like, well, maybe we need to figure so. It's like, if you're, I don't believe there's a such thing as a transgender child, by the way, just personally. I don't think that you can be a transgender child. I don't think you even know what that is. Maybe when you're older, you can make that decision. If you've got, serious gender dysphoria, those things, that's a real thing. Okay, got it. I don't think a 12-year-old thinks that he's a girl. I don't. And maybe he does, but I don't think that you can be in that mind space at 12 years old. I just don't. And I really don't think you should alter your body to accommodate that, life-changing and irreversibly. But when we're seeing like the example in Minnesota, where you've got the transgender softball player absolutely raking for his team, what do you say to the little girls that have to play against that?
Yeah, so on the first point you were making, I do think it's a family issue. I think parents know their kids and they sort out how they want to best position their kids for success. And so that's what I would say on that front. In terms of, once we are then moving outside the family and management of the family to engaging in more general activities, I'm coming back to my first point. I do think that's something to be managed. So as you've got the community that's determining how they want to deal with it. And then you have different levels of sport. I assume you did sports too. I was very involved in sports when I was younger. Then you have the different bodies that are governing the levels of competition. And they've got to come up with whatever their policies are. So again, I think it's really tough to come up with broad strokes of nationally, what do we do? And
here's my question.
But I agree with you. It's wrong to completely discount the issue altogether because, it's something that's come up.
So I think what you're saying is that, if Minnesota wants to allow biological boys to compete against the girls, then Minnesota needs to handle that itself. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Or even more micro than that, honestly. I'm saying, okay, I competed at a school. Then if you were really good and you're that team, then you advance to the district level competition. The district is run by a certain body of sport. Then you keep going. You have the state level of sports, the overall, Ohio Athletic Association, right? That's governing all of these things. Mm-hmm. Then if you're really good, you're going to college. NCAA is coming up with its own regulations. I just think
doesn't Title IX kind of stand in the way of that though? Isn't Title IX, and wasn't it developed so that women could have an opportunity and so that certain states or certain bodies couldn't discriminate against women and not provide them with those equal opportunities? Isn't that kind of why Title IX was formed?
Yeah, but in terms of the interpretation and application of all these things, I just think it's tough for us to be able to get into the weeds of each of these decisions.
You think it's tough just to say boys shouldn't be in women's sports? I think that's the easiest thing in the world. I think we've been doing it for as long as I can remember, up until about 10 years ago. I think it was pretty easy. It was like, if you're a boy, you compete against the boys. And if you're a girl, you compete against the girls. I don't know why this is spun up into such an issue in 2025 where it's like, oh no, what do we do? Well, what we were doing.
Well, I think it's because the Republican Party's made it a huge issue.
Have we made it an issue? No, because we say if you're a boy, you compete against the boys.
I just don't hear, I'll be honest with you, I don't, and I am out all the time doing organizing. I don't hear anybody it's not the first issue. It's not the second issue. It's not the third issue they're bringing up. It's just not. First issue is my electricity bills are too high. Second issue is general cost of living. And third is I'm really worried about my kids' education. Those are usually the top three things that I'm hearing about.
Well, I mean, I would argue that goes into the education discussion. I guess I'm rather confused based on what I believed was a liberal worldview. I'm a little confused and perplexed by this. And I think, if I'm being honest, I think that the Democrat Party is confused and perplexed as well and doesn't know how to handle this. Because when you're saying, listen, the governing bodies should handle it, they're the ones that if they want to allow it in or not allow it in, they should handle it. And I believe that that's what you're saying. But I'm wondering if you would feel the same way if certain governing bodies of certain sports or certain activities said, well, you know what, we don't want Black people. Would you say let them handle it? Or would you say, oh, no, the federal government needs to go in and protect Black athletes? I would assume you would say that the government would need to protect Black athletes and their civil rights.
I think we should try to avoid discrimination in all facets of our society. But when we come down to determining who's violated a rule or not, those are things that are left to courts of law and organizations that are interpreting the law. And if they overstep, then they will be challenged in court. And then we will lead it to the people who are judges that are trained to decide who has overstepped the law and who has not. I mean, we have a system to decide these things. We should let it focus on that.
I'm just wondering,
and I would just come back again to this is not what most people care about. It just is not.
Well, I disagree with you. I think that parents and parents' rights and education and all of this, I think it's all kind of wrapped in to one thing here. But just kind of in wrapping up this topic, for you personally, not legally, personally, does it bother you to see little girls or high school female athletes stand low on the podium with a biological man standing at the top of the podium? Does that not make you feel for these girls at all that are having to compete against somebody who's bigger, faster, and stronger than them?
I think we should have fair sports. I think we should have fair competition. I also think that we should make sure that we protect trans people in our country. And I don't think those things are mutually exclusive.
Okay. All right. I want to go, while we wrap this up, though, I do have to get your take on the Riley Gaines versus Simone Biles back and forth. I clearly know where you stand, and it's on the Simone Biles, ideology of it all. But do you think it was right for Simone Biles to then take a shot at Riley Gaines for her muscular physicality and compare her to a man?
Well, I think we saw that Simone Biles herself apologized on this because, it's not, I don't think we should ever be commenting really on anyone's body. That would just be my personal approach, because that can get you into tricky territory pretty quickly, but especially children. And I think that's why we saw Simone Biles apologize. Probably was a little bit too far.
Yeah. I think it kind of just undermines the whole argument there. And in my opinion, saying that about Riley Gaines was actually the transphobic part of it, which I don't know if she understood or not. I'm happy to hear she apologized. I did not see the apology there. The whole back and forth to me was really ridiculous. And I think Simone Biles would have been better off not saying what she said and not throwing the insults at Riley that she did. But hey, listen, it is what it is. I want to talk to you next about the Terry Moran ABC debacle. ABC choosing to, at least for now, suspend their journalist Terry Moran for a post that he made regarding Stephen Miller. Do you think ABC did the right thing here?
Yeah, I mean, we're in a period, and you've already referenced it earlier in our conversation, where there's a lot of skepticism of the media and whether or not people can trust the media. And I think it's important that journalists uphold the standard of neutrality to the extent, it still exists in this country. And it does, because there's a lot of journalists that are trained in that, and they take it very, very seriously. I mean, that they will never even, openly support a candidate because they take that oath of just trying to be neutral and provide clear information to people so seriously. And so Terry, I don't know him personally, obviously, but as it's been reported, and the statements that he said and critiquing and people in the administration in what felt like a more personal way, not really focused on policy decisions they were making, that does seem to cross the line of journalistic neutrality. Even if I agree with what his critiques were, he's not the person that should be communicating that publicly as a journalist.
Well, I agree with you on that front. Terry Moran is more than welcome to express his feelings and his opinions. He should be a commentator. I'm a commentator. I do opinion. I don't pretend that I'm like a journalist. I'm not an anchor. I am a commentator, and I quite proudly state my opinion. So if you want to do that, but don't masquerade in front of a national viewing audience like you're somehow neutral. And also, just a couple months prior, interview the sitting president under false pretenses. So that's my take on that one. I want to get into some other things that I think the Democrat Party is grappling with and get your strategy. So it was reported last week that the Democrat Party is spending about $20 million to learn how to talk to men. I believe they did it in a Ritz-Carlton in San Francisco, trying to decide how they're going to speak to American men because they have a problem with American men, particularly white American men, when they're not hoisting them on the platform to compete against girls. But what do you think Democrats could do better to win over American men? And do you think Sam is the way to do it?
No, I've already kind of been public in critiquing this effort. I just think it's so silly and a waste of money. I don't know. I mean, Tony, you probably know a lot of men. I know a lot of men. I don't think men are, that complicated. In fact, they're a lot like all of us, is that they want to be able to earn enough money to support their families and their lives. And it's ridiculous. So I am not optimistic about the SAM effort. I think if you have $20 million to spare, then we should just be out there talking to people face to face. I agree with you that we do have a trust problem as Democrats. And the best way to restore trust is by meeting people where they're at, not flooding them with ads that are made up by professional consultants.
In a Ritz-Carlton in San Francisco. I mean, I think that's the line, right? I mean, I couldn't describe the inefficiencies any better than that. Democrat operatives sit in a Ritz-Carlton in San Francisco and decide how to talk to American men. I mean, that's the line. Speaking of, the lack of transparency, honesty, courage, I have to ask you personally as a Democrat, did you know that Joe Biden was cognitively slipping before June 27th of 2024?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't working in the White House or Washington.
No, but you had eyes and ears, right? I mean, I wasn't working in the White House either, but I clocked it in 2020. So I'm not Nostradamus, right? I can see and hear.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he definitely was aging, and so I noticed that and observing it. But in terms of like cognitive decline, I hadn't, or any of senile and these kinds of things. I did not personally see that.
Really?
So, but definitely aging for sure. And that's what I heard from a lot of people is like, he's pretty old. And I think it's tricky because that can often get conflated with ageism and all of these things, but there's no denying that we have a gerontocracy problem in the Democratic Party, that for some reason we've landed in this place that, until you get very, very advanced in age, like beyond your 40s, you're still not worthy somehow always of being in a position of leadership. And that's something I push back on a lot. I mean, we have, I think we see a lot of Republicans that are very young that are moving up, y'all's chain and ladder to different leadership positions. But then also internationally, I mean, I think people forget, it's like we have presidents of other countries that are in their 40s. That is not weird. And so we need a total refresh. We need to really just reset and make room for a lot of great talent that's out there, but is often being gate kept by, the political consultant class that seems to dominate our party.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. But again, the Joe Biden thing, it's not just because he was old. He and Trump are very similar in age. It's that he's cognitively slipping and has been for quite some time. And I guess what I still can't get around, and I think the Democrat Party is going to have to confront it, is if people like me, who works for Fox News and does a podcast for a living, in 2020 could say Joe Biden's slipping, why couldn't the leaders of the Democrat Party, people that are much smarter, much more brilliant than me, had access more than me and others like me, why didn't they see it? Or did they see it and they just hated Trump so much that they wanted to be quiet? Or they were just so terrified of running Kamala that they were hoping that they could scoot Joe across the finish line? That's going to be a question that the Democrat Party is going to have to confront.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you, I have not heard a lot of people in 2020 that were now starting to see these books come out or whatever that's more focused on the like post during the administration towards halfway point of the administration and beyond. I agree to the extent that this is something, well, for sure, that Republicans are not going to have go away. I agree with that for sure, and so I do think that it's important, and I don't know. I mean, I would advise that the family to just be direct about what they knew, what they didn't, and kind of free everybody else to not have to constantly talk about this, because I do think it's going to continue to be a vulnerable. Do I think it's a good use of America's time for the Republican Party to continue to focus on this issue? I personally do not, but I understand politically why that's going to continue to happen. And the best way to put it to bed is just to be upfront about what, the Biden family knew, didn't know, and move forward.
Yeah, the Biden family, the rest of the Democrat Party, the so-called journalists, everybody just kind of coming clean about it, I think would be great. But then I think that they're a real tough spot, because if you come clean about it, then you look like you're a liar and politically motivated to keep someone in office just because you hate the alternative. So that's going to be something the Democrat Party is going to have to confront. There is no way around it. And I understand why Democrats want to move on from this. But there are a lot of people who are reading these books who are getting a lot of details that are like, okay, this person was getting lost in their closet. How were they running the country? Were they running the country? Who was? So we have a legitimate reason to question that, don't you think?
Yeah, and I don't think that there is really a risk. I mean, at this point, looking at the Biden, like, Joe Biden is in his 80s. He's not running for office again, clearly. They probably have the least amount to lose in just being upfront. I mean, I hear that can be like a tricky position to put yourself in, and maybe there's other people beyond that. But well, I don't know. And I guess from my perspective, again, I sit here in Columbus, Ohio. I sit here in the state of Ohio. Democrats are not winning the state of Ohio. We got decimated in the last presidential here. We weren't able to win the Senate seat. And so is there a risk in I don't know, being upfront and also clearing the way for, again, a whole generation of leaders that's ready to just get out there and speak to what's really concerning people and come with a bold agenda without all this baggage? That's the move. That's the move for us. It's not only the move, it's the only option. And so we really need to continue to push. And, if and it's funny, I mean, we refer to this like, who's in charge, the party apparatus.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
I don't even know exactly who we're talking about. I have a sense of the category of person, but I don't personally know exactly who we're talking about.
Who do you think is in control of the Democrat Party right now? Like, who would you say is the leader?
I think that it is a combination of people who are funding politics, of people who work as consultants and make money off of politics. It's not so different from the Republican side of things, but I do think on the Republican side, the key distinction is, Donald Trump has really asserted himself as running the party. Makes sense. I mean, he's now president, but it's been the case even in the period where I think he wasn't president during Joe Biden's administration. And we don't have a similar clear individual leader in that way. We have kind of an amalgamation of different folks that are in the mix. But and look, and I'm not saying I will be the first person, and I know we won't agree on this, but the first person to critique a lot of what Donald Trump is doing in office, for sure. So I'm not saying that we necessarily are working towards having one singular figure. I think there's a lot of risk in that. Look, I mean, professionally, I go after monopolies. I don't like concentrated power. I like distributed power, right? That we have more freedom as individuals and as business owners to do what we want and be left alone. So I'm not arguing for a singular leader, but I do think that there is this nexus of elites that has somehow been able to just gatekeep and keep control at almost every level of democratic politics. And that needs to be broken up as fast as it can, because the people are not buying it anymore. And we got to shift. We got to adjust. We got to present some new options.
So As it stands right now, though, who would you like to see run in 2028? Because you're going to have to pick somebody. I mean, you can't have 30 Democrat presidents. You have to pick one. So who would you like to see as your candidate? I mean, I could tell you on my side a few names.
Your favorite Democrat? You have one?
No. I can't help you there. Actually, I can. Here's who you guys need to run. You need to run Tim Walz. Please.
Okay.
Please run Tim Walz. Please run Tim Walz and Jasmine Crockett. I think that's strategically a great idea for you guys. I hope you do it. I think that'd be great. Not for us, for you.
Wink, wink. I got it.
So what do you think? Do you think Tim Walz or?
I think there are a lot of people. Look, I mean, that primary is going to be wild. There's going to be a lot of people who run. I think everyone's going to view it as an opportunity who, from age probably, in my vintage of like early 40s to 60 somethings, like this is your moment. If you're a Democrat in politics and you ever thought I might be able to be president one day, this is probably the time you're going to do it. And so, senators, governors, probably some Congress people that are not at all even household names are going to put themselves in the mix. And I welcome it. I mean, primaries can be kind of a controversial thing in Democratic politics because we have the, tightly controlled political machines. But I welcome a primary. I think, especially because of what we were just talking about, that we don't really have a consensus direction as a party at the moment. We need a real competitive primary. Yeah. It probably will be a little messy. That's good because then we're going to get a lot of different options out there and figure out what the people actually want. So the most important thing is that we do not let this be a primary where we have, again, the amorphous blob of people who are in charge of the Democratic Party that we were just talking about. Who the hell knows who those people are? I don't know. But that they don't control the outcome, that we actually let it be a real primary and we let the people decide. And that's going to put us in the strongest position. Even if it doesn't necessarily result in ultimate victory, it is going to be part of that process of rebuilding trust, of allowing us to be ideas first and build more support nationally.
You're right. Last question for you, just on that topic. I was there in 2019, 2020, when the last Democrat primary was going on before they shut it down, And
did you come to the debate in Ohio, in Westerville?
I did not, but I was in LA and I was in Las Vegas right before COVID hit. So my question for you would be, on the next go around, if the question by the moderator is asked, do you believe that we should pay for illegal immigrants health care? Do you think they should all raise their hand like they did last time?
I don't think they all will. I'll put it that way. I don't think they all will. I think that the immigration issue, and this is something I brought up before. I mean, I think November did open up a lot of people's eyes in the Democratic Party about where
it doesn't look like it.
Well, and here's a distinction I would make is Democratic elected officials, Democratic professional, Democratic politics blog, and like people who identify as Democrats on the ground. I've heard from people on the ground that were genuinely surprised about, some of the exit polling on immigration, some of people's views of immigration that was coming out during the campaign. And so I think there have been some learnings there among regular people that then are now going to, as a lag, probably influence how more elected officials are talking about it and the types of people that will run for president. And ultimately, I mean, here's my take overall is I have one parent who was born here. I am one parent who immigrated to the U.S. Support, and this is something I should think a lot of Democrats here, support a place for immigration. We want to have a system of immigration that is more organized and faster for people who we want to be part of our country. We haven't had that in a long time. We had a deal, which we'll have to talk about some other time, that Republicans kind of blew up, but we'll talk about that some other time in Congress.
Yeah, because we didn't need it and it was trash.
But the point stands that a lot of Americans want to figure this out. They want to be able to have a place where that's always been part, of our country's history. And so we need to preserve that. But the current system is kind of a mess. And we definitely don't want to facilitate people who are breaking laws to continue to be in the country. Like that just feels like a lot of people get that. I don't know what professional paid political consultants will tell people to say. I don't do that. But where real people are at is what I just described.
Yeah, might want to advise some of the Democrats in California because it doesn't look like they're getting it. Specifically, just right now in California, I don't think any of them are at a national level or at a high-profile level, but certainly not now. I would say they learned nothing, and maybe they should review those exit polling, results over and over and over again until they get it. Because the majority of the American people not only support deporting criminal, violent, illegal aliens, they support mass deportations in general. So Democrat Party, you guys got to get on board and do some reckoning with that, because I know that the sob stories worked last time. It doesn't show like they're working right now.
Well, and again, I mean, this might be something we come back to, but I do think that we as the Democratic Party have to be a lot more precise in how we're talking about certain issues, and immigration is one of those issues, because defaulting to just criticizing whatever is happening in this Trump administration is not going to break through. I completely agree with that. I think we've got to be responsive to what people are experiencing, what they actually feel, and craft, our messages and our policy responses accordingly. But I will say, I mean, overall, and we're talking a little bit in we're not citing specific studies or the polling, but people do want respect for the law. And there was polling that showed that even among independents with the Garcia situation and sending to El Salvador, that was crossing the line for people who identify as independents. So I do think there are some limits to what people want that enforcement to look like, namely that they want it to actually follow the law, but completely agree that people want to see action on immigration. And they also want to see a lot of action on making sure that we have a strong economy that is going to support them and their families. I still think that's the primary view, regardless of political affiliation, of what people want from our elected officials in government.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate the conversation, and I hope to have you back, because I'm sure there'll be a lot more for us to dig into. It's really enlightening for me to get that perspective. And, we agree on some things, don't agree on other things, but I always appreciate the dialogue. So thank you so much for being here, and please do come back.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. All right, folks. Gavin Newsom is a narcissist and a total loser. He's also stoked beyond belief that the burning streets of LA are distracting residents from all the other problems he's created. It's time for final thoughts. So Gavin Newsom is a narcissist and a total loser. These violent and destructive riots are actually a godsend for Governor Gavin Newsom, though. Not only can he use the glow of the flames to light his selfies, he's surely relieved that, at least for the week, Californians may be more distracted with said flames and riots than all the other things wrong with the failed state he drove into the ground.
I mean, it's, again, sober and serious moment. Meanwhile, can I just add, and this is why I told the president, just get it over with. Arrest me. Move on. If you need some head to scalp, do it with me, but stop messing with these kids. Stop messing with 4-year-olds, kids in elementary school. We've got kids. We have hundreds of graduations down here. Kids are not going in their own graduations. Families, grandparents here legally, mixed status families in some cases, scared to death to go to a graduation. People are scared to walk down the streets. It's not just Home Depots getting their car washed. We have incidences. I didn't believe it because what was I thinking? I actually believe when they said this is not true. But then I saw videos. They're doing checkpoints, checking people's IDs. We've never seen this kind of deployment in so many actions. It's mass panic out here in the nation's largest county, in the nation's largest state. Good, hardworking people, decent people. These are not the criminals. These are not the thugs.
Oh, did you hear him begging to be arrested? He wants to be Donald Trump so bad, it's actually sad. He'd rather get his greasy mug in front of the camera to taunt Tom Homan or pick a social media fight with Republican leaders than discuss the giant elephant, or I guess in this case, the giant ass in the room. His state is suffering a massive budget shortfall. So yeah, there are about 12 billion reasons Gavin would rather focus on the ICE raids. But it's not just that. It's also this. California has the third highest unemployment rate in the nation, highest poverty rate, and is home, no pun intended, to the largest homeless population in the country. And don't forget, the state's Medicaid program, Medi-Cal, is bankrupt, and expenditures are $6 billion higher than expected due to all the illegal immigrants he welcomed to take advantage of the program. But wait, there's more. The state is also bracing for yet another gas tax hike. Gas could go up as much as 65 cents per gallon very soon. And then there's that bullet train to nowhere, the $20 billion that went poof to solve homelessness. I mean, damn, need I continue? It's a failed state, and Gavin knows it, but at least for now, he can get on camera and yap about President Trump sending the National Guard and the Marines to keep his state's largest city from burning to the frickin' ground. Well, enjoy it while it lasts, buddy. Your presidential ambitions are over, so I hope that podcast is raking for you. And those are my final thoughts. Please be sure to tune in live tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern. Catch full episodes of the show on Outkick and Fox Nation. Please like and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Tomi Lahren is Fearless. From Nashville, God bless. Take care. Hey, thanks for watching. If you want more of my hottest takes, must-see conversations, and of course, my final thoughts, click here and make sure you subscribe here so you never miss a beat. I'll be here every weekday, and I hope you'll join me.